I call the July 28, 2014 meeting to order in public session, and I want to announce that President Schmidt is in attendance this evening. I want to announce that President Schmidt is in attendance this evening via teleconference at 627 Snedden Court in Grand Junction, Colorado, and that she has appointed me to act as President Pro Tem for tonight's meeting, and Trustee Schaefer has been appointed to act as Clerk Pro Tem this evening. Roll call, please.
Trustee Johnston? Here. Trustee Schaefer?
Here.
Trustee Mendez?
Here.
Trustee Schmidt?
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Mrs. Johnston, would you do us the honor of... Welcome, everyone. And before we get started with the first item on the agenda, I believe that Mrs. Elsig has an announcement to make from closed session. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do this moment of silence first. I'm sorry. Forgot. I can find my... As many of you, one of our board members passed away recently, and so I would like to hold a moment of silence for Mr. Bobby Hernandez, Board of Education member, who passed away Saturday, July 12th. Mr. Hernandez was a valued member of the JUSD Board of Education since 2012, and as a former student teacher, substitute teacher, and volunteer high school wrestling coach in our school district. He served on many of our school district committees. Bobby served on the Parks Board for 20 years and was currently serving on the boards of the Jurupa Mountains Cultural Center and the Jurupa Valley Chamber of Commerce, and was also a current member of the Rotary Club of Jurupa. Mr. Hernandez had a heart for service to others, especially Jurupa students and staff and members of the Jurupa community. The board would like to express their condolences to Hernandez family, JUSD staff and students, and the Jurupa community for their loss. Please let's take a moment of silence to honor his community to our service, his memory. Let's stand to... Thank you very much. Okay, at this moment, I do believe we have an announcement for Ms. Zelzig in regards to an item from closed session.
We do, thank you. The board voted in closed session with a 4-0 vote to appoint Marissa Rivas as elementary principal. Ms. Rivas will be joining us at Ina Arbuckle Elementary. If you'd stand, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Elsig, and congratulations, and welcome. Okay, we're with item number 1, recognition. Recognize Target Field Trip recipient, Jurupa Valley High School Art Club.
Thank you. Target Field Trip has provided a grant to the amount of $700 to the Jurupa Valley High School Art Club, and they will be used to sponsor field trips.
Thank you, and we have another recognition here. Recognized recipient of grant, California Retired Teachers Association, Mr. Broski.
Thank you. The California Retired Teachers Association notified the district that Jurupa Valley High School Vocal Music Program has been awarded a grant for $500. The funds can be used for scholarships, music purchase, festival fees, transportation, or upgrading of sound system.
Thank you. Next item, recognized recipient grant, Barona Band of Mission Indians. Mr. Broski.
Thank you. The Barona Band, along with Assemblyman Eric Linder's office, notified the district that Jurupa Middle School has been awarded a grant for $5,000 to assist with the purchase of library books.
And another recognition, recognized funding for after-school education and safety program.
Thank you. The CDE notified us that we will continue to receive funding for the after-school education and safety program. The base amount is $1,624,434.38, and that will be a part of our Think Together after-school elementary program.
Thank you. And item E, recognize funding for 21st Century Community Learning Centers, equitable access.
Thank you. We're also notified that the 21st Century Community Learning Centers Equitable Access Fund has been awarded in the amount of $125,000, and that will also go towards our elementary Think Together program.
Thank you. And next item, recognize funding for 21st Century Community Learning Centers, CORE.
Thank you. This is another portion of the same grant from 21st Century Community Learning Centers, $336,150, which will also go towards our after-school Think Together program.
Thank you for all those wonderful announcements. Good to hear those things. The next item, this is the opportunity for the public to address the board, and that's item 2, public verbal comments. And I have, I believe, about 4 or 5 cards here. And the first one that I have is Teresa M. Zimbal.
Symbol, that's me.
Zimbal, okay, did I get that right?
Symbol, do I just come up?
Yes, please, step up to the podium here. Thank you.
Do I give these to you so you can see them?
Give them to
These two.
the Secretary of the Board.
Hello, everyone. Okay, this is the original letter that we parents, there were 4 of us originally, then it went down to 3 only because one of the parents, Adiels, can you raise your hand? They decided to keep their child back with Miss Pelagi one more year because of short of stature and his special needs. That letter was never addressed until the following year after complaining. I believe we complained to, it was either Mr. Deshawn or, the other guy, sorry. Dave Dabrowski. There you go. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. Michelle Johnson says she contacted us in November. Were any of you contacted in November? Jimmy? Adiels? No. And the other family? No. Just me. Notice my phone number is not on there. And I stayed home purposefully all throughout November. I have 2 special needs children. I can do that. I stayed home, and our answering machine works perfectly. There was no follow-up phone call from a secretary, or we sent it certified mail even. Nothing. I actually have letters from children from the 6th grade. You can say, oh, they're just children. Aren't our children important? Oh, yeah, thank you. Absolutely. Saying they don't want these children to be separated from them. One is the whole class, and other children decided to write separately. I also have a letter from a family who already attends Mission Middle, who's being promoted to the 8th grade. They're unable to be here. And the letter says, we, Diana and Fernando Saldana, parents of Fernando Saldana, are writing this letter of complaint regarding our son's current school of attendance, Mission Middle School, herein called Mission, of the Jurupa Unified School District, herein called District. Our special needs son has not been challenged academically, but he has also regressed socially and has begun acting out when he returns from school. Fernando is anxious and joyless after attending Mission for 1 year and has lost the perspective and importance of interacting with peers socially. The special needs children are isolated, sitting by themselves at lunchtime and only joining their peers in physical education class. He has regressed to when he was approximately in the 3rd grade. In regards to academic challenges, there are none. We have had to create, our own lessons for him because the work he is being given from school is beyond his academic and cognitive level. When Fernando attended summer school in June 2014, teachers and parents noticed that he had regressed socially. He was withdrawn and refused to interact with his peers inside and outside the classroom. During summer school, it came to our attention when Fernando started bringing home work that was more challenging and better suited for his abilities academically. I, Diana, approached the summer school teacher, who was also his teacher in the 4th grade through 6th grades. I expressed to her my concerns that Fernando had regressed academically and socially, and she agreed. On a field trip to Carol's restaurant at the end of the summer school, Other parents and teachers noticed that Fernando sat in the corner away from his classmates and adults. When the teacher asked him if he wanted to join everyone, he refused and kept his head down. This was a behavior he'd overcome in elementary school, where his class and general education classes were integrated on a regular basis, and he was required to connect with other students. After much encouragement, Fernando began to initiate conversation with peers and seemed a little happier. We anticipate that the district will cooperate with us in sending our child to Mission Middle in order to be challenged and be happier with his peers that he has been in school with since the first grade. We would greatly appreciate you investigating this matter. Thank you. As you see, this letter is the original signature, and it was sent to the procedural safeguards in Sacramento today. It was faxed. They also sent this letter, to the school district, Michelle L. Johnson. Dear Ms. Johnson, we, Diana Fernando Saldana, parents of Fernando Saldana, have decided to join the other families in sending our child to Mira Loma Middle School instead of Mission Middle School. Two of our main concerns for this decision are the lack of academic challenges and regression of social interaction with general peers. And as you see, that is their original signature. And if you want to see it close up, I will give it to you. So, that's basically it. We want our children to have a chance to follow their friends. When my child was at camp and was crying, another boy from the general ed class came over, put his arm around him. Hey, John, it's okay. He knew him. They had bonded. And it calmed my child down. I want those friendships to continue. It's very important to me and to the other children.
Would you like to leave those letters with the secretary of the board, the letters that you just read to us?
Oh, you want to see?
No, if you would like to leave them with the secretary.
Well, they'd have to be copies. I brought the original on purpose. I can always send them.
That'll be fine.
You want me to send it?
Yes, please do.
Oh, okay. I brought the originals on purpose. I didn't want you to think, I just signed some parent's name and,
That'll be fine.
Okay. So how do I get them to you? I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, next we have Danielle Davey.
Hi, I'm Danielle Davey. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous. My son Jace, he just graduated 4th grade, and he was with Mrs. Pelagi. And early July, I got a letter out of the blue. He's not going into junior high yet, but I did get a letter that was very disheartening, that I was being brought into what was going on with the junior hires, and that they were going to uproot my child from where he's been going for the last few years. He's gone with Miss Hurt, he's gone with Miss Pelagi, that they were going to move his whole program over to Rustic Lane. And it was, anybody that has an autistic child knows how hard it is for them to adjust to things. It took my son over 6 months to get used to a new aide, and he fought it tooth and nail into where now he's with his aide. But for Michelle Johnson to just out of the blue, just uproot their whole program without even concerning, like talking to us parents and asking us how we thought about what was going on, it was upsetting. And I tried calling Miss Michelle Johnson. I never got a phone call back. I did talk to the gentleman that was her secretary, and he basically said that we didn't have a choice. And I find that very disheartening. I do have a choice, and my child does have a choice of what school he goes to. I've already been to Rustic Lane before. My son went to the summer school program there. It was not a good experience, and I know over the years there's been a lot of attempted child abductions coming from that school. It's near a major street. We did get together as a group and we were trying to resolve the issue, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, after 3 weeks of fighting, and let me tell you, I didn't sleep, I stopped eating. It was disheartening, especially for someone, when you're calling them, you're asking for answers, and they're not even returning your phone calls. I finally did get a phone call back, and they said that they decided that they're not going to change it, that they're going to go ahead and leave the program where it's at. But now I'm going to be faced in a couple of years with the same situation as to where my child's going to go for junior high. I don't want my child to go to Mission Middle. It's not a good school for my child. And he should be able to go with his peers, the people that know him. I'm more upset at the fact that how could someone in a position as Michelle Johnson can make a decision without even talking to anybody about it. Granted, maybe it was talked to about other people, but we're the parents. We should have a say. And then all of a sudden it's just switched right back. But we got letters and these little pamphlets that we were supposed to show our children. It was basically like a visual aid to show them that, you know, oh, change is good, change is so awesome. It's not awesome to a child who has autism. It takes them a very long time to change. That's pretty much all I had to say. Thank you.
Ms. Sylvia Olguin.
So much to say, so little time. I don't know if you guys saw this article in Dave Barnes' paper, but boy, do they know you guys. Does this guy read this administration to the core? It's all about the money. It's not about the kids. It's about what you have in your pocket at the end of the day. That should never be it. He states here, when is this district finally going to get rid of Bill Elzick? He retired, you brought him back at $52,000 a year at retirement. Then, lo and behold, he was an interim. This is ridiculous. You say you don't have money, but you keep bringing past employees back that are supposed to retire. Maybe if you didn't do that and got qualified employees to do the job, you wouldn't have to keep bringing them back. This guy's go on to state, you know, how are we going to get rid of Bill Elzick when his wife is the deputy superintendent? Nepotism? Yeah, that's what it is. Talking about autistic kids, I came a year and a half ago when you messed with the kids from Rancho Vista. I told you that program was awesome. The teachers that worked with these kids were giving. Just as many of these teachers, they give from their heart, they give from their soul. I don't think this administration would know that because sometimes you act like you don't have a heart and soul. When money is your main priority and you put that above these kids, you are not doing your job. I have repeatedly said, we are here because of these kids. We didn't have these kids, we wouldn't have our jobs, none of us. Not the lower, us, or not the higher, you. It is our responsibility to keep these kids safe, to keep them happy, to teach them, and to help the parents when they're having issues. But it seems by what was said today, you're not doing none of that. But this is your great superintendent that you praise about. This is our union magazine called Focus. They have a program in this called ACE, Appreciating Classified Employees, where administrators, board members go and do our job. They shadow our job. They actually walk in our shoes. I believe if Tammy Elzick, Bill Elzick, Teresa Rausch had to go and do our job during the summer, they would know why I've been fighting for us to be allowed to wear shorts. We don't, it's not a good old jolly time. I mean, we strip floors, we wax floors, we bonnet carpets, we detail every single classroom to standards and above and beyond that. But it's so easy for these people to say, oh, no, you can't wear shorts. Why not? We sweat like you wouldn't believe. I would love to see these ladies go and do our job, go and do my job, and see how much sweat is going to come out of places they didn't know they could sweat at. But you guys don't care about that. You should be shadowing teachers doing their jobs and then get praised for scores going up. How can you get praised for something you don't do, but teachers with their heart and dedication do for these kids, and administration gets praised? That's ridiculous. But you keep on praising this man who keeps on going up, and we got a 3% raise. How ridiculous was it when I saw an article in the Press Enterprise saying Elliott got a 9% raise. We hadn't gotten a raise in 8 years, and Elliott got a 9% raise when this man told me face to face he would never take 1 penny more than classified or certificated got, and he lied. He's been lying for years back, but this is the man that you praised. 2 of your seats are up. My heart goes up to Bobby's family, but 2 of your seats are up. And you need to remember that the people that put you in your seats can definitely take you out. And they could make this district very difficult for these administrators who keep getting the raises, getting benefits. I mean, it stated that Elliott made 200, yeah, and I see you looking at the timer. But with all the benefits that he gets and everything that comes along with that, isn't it more like $250,000? Because you refuse, Mr. Mendez, to talk about salary, but yet you very, very freely gave up that it is discussed behind closed session. Isn't that a Brown Act violation? You better look into it, because I am.
Celestine, is it Albin? A-L, can't read it, A-L-B-I-N? Is that correct?
Yes. Good evening. I'm using this as my guide here. My name is Celestine Albin, as you know. I'm here today in regards to my daughter, Genesis Albin, who attended Granite Hill Elementary as a kindergartner. I'm hoping that you can assist me with the hardship that I'm facing. I registered my daughter for kindergarten at Granite Hill last school year. I had heard there would be boundary changes, but at the time they were not in force. When I registered, I made sure to ask if the boundary change would affect my daughter, and the registrar that I registered my daughter with said no, because it would only affect new students, and 1st through 6th grade would be able to continue at Granite Hill with transportation. So to me, that was great, because I figured my daughter would still be able to get to attend the same school. In early May, I received a letter stating the boundaries were in effect and the new home school for my residents would be Rustic Lane. I was very disappointed, especially since I made sure to ask when I registered. Just reading the letter and my daughter overhearing caused her to be upset, knowing she would have to change schools. This change is going to affect my family tremendously. I counted on my daughter attending Granite Hill and still receiving transportation, as my husband and I work full-time and we do not have any other means of transportation for our daughter to get to school. I put in a transfer for my daughter to continue at Granite Hill since she was already attending, and because I am familiar with the teachers there, I think that would be in the best interest for my child. The transfer was granted. In that case, I asked if my daughter could still receive transportation, as the students that live in our area, 2nd through 6th, will still be picked up and dropped off in the same places as were last school year. In speaking with the secretary, Ms. Gonzalez, and the assistant superintendent, Ms. Ford, they stated it would not be possible as I had to furnish at my expense. I also stated that I would continue to pay for busing as I did the previous year. The bus will not be going out of the way to pick up my daughter. It will already be picking up in that area. I feel that my transfer situation is different among others. My daughter is still continuing the same elementary, but because of boundary changes, cannot receive transportation. I also wanted to know why weren't the 1st graders included in the boundary change. My family and I have been stressing over this and are trying to find out how we can make this work. Even if my daughter was to attend the new school due to the boundary change, we are still under the 2 miles and cannot receive transportation. I don't understand how working parents will be able to get their children to school. There is no way that parents would allow 1st grade students to walk 2 miles to schools. I have even called child care centers in hope of transportation assistance, and they do not offer for schools that I would need transportation to. I'm just hoping that that you can help me in this situation, or have any recommendations of what I can do in my situation. This is the first time I've ever spoke at a board meeting, so I don't know what happens after I speak.
Staff looks at all the concerns that are brought before the board, and so they'll look into it and they'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next we have item 3 here, administrative reports and written comments. Item A, polling survey results for potential bond measures. Mrs. Ford.
Yes. As you know, there was a polling survey, a scientific polling survey that was conducted, and we have Mr. Jared Boygan of TBWB and Mr. Corey O'Neill of Tolchin Research here tonight to present the results of the polling survey of 300 likely voters and the survey regarding the support for a specific school bond measure.
Thank you, Paula, Superintendent Duchamp, board members. Appreciate you having us back. Jared Boygan with TBWB Strategies, and in a moment I'll turn over to my colleague Corey O'Neill, who will walk you through the data of the scientific survey results. I'll provide some comments a little bit as he's going for some context, and then again at the end, but let him walk you through the data. I think just as a reminder of context of why we're here, there's been quite a bit of public planning, outreach, transparency by administration, board members, and community members as you've been considering this potential bond. There was a facilities committee with a lot of work done, involved some board members and some community members as well. That committee reviewed sites extensively, made a good report to the community. Staff has been out doing community focus groups to a number of places throughout the community. Receiving comments back in written and verbal form from members of the community. A mailer went out to the community soliciting feedback and comments, for which we received a lot of survey results, non-scientific survey results in that format, but qualitative feedback, lots of comment cards, lots of good response and feedback. And so this quantitative voter survey that you're going to get results from tonight, this is the next step in that process of finalizing a potential proposal for the ballot. It's a more scientific way of testing public opinion. And Corey will talk a little bit about the sampling methodology, but this is modeled on a very specific likely set of likely November 2014 voters. It involves some statistical modeling, and as actual data, the numbers are probably more reliable than some of the anecdotal data we've been gathering throughout the course of this process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Corey.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you for having us. So as Jared was saying, we recently conducted survey research among likely voters that was done about 2 weeks ago. The survey was conducted among 300 likely November 2014 voters, fielded July 15th through the 22nd. We did surveys among landlines and cell phones, and also conducted surveys in English and Spanish where necessary. And the survey has an overall margin of error of 5.6, plus or minus 5.6%. And so in this process, we tested language, possible language for the bond measure, and I'll read it to you. Local schools, 21st century readiness, job training, upgrade, and repair measure. Shall Jurupa Unified School District upgrade career training and instructional technology, repair aging classrooms, roofs, restrooms, electrical systems, improve school safety and security, construct vocational facilities and science and computer labs to meet current academic standards by issuing $144 million of bond at legal interest rates with annual financial audits and an independent citizens oversight committee, with all funds staying local and no money for administrators' salaries or pensions.
I want to just point out briefly, I know I see your bond counsel in the audience here, Leslie Ann Wells. This is the prescribed format for a bond measure question that you put before the voters. If there's legal questions as to the format, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer those. But the reason we ask it, even though it's kind of a mouthful, is this is very similar to what a measure would look like if you actually put something on the ballot. This is what it will look like on the printed ballot.
And so we did ask this among all voters in the survey, and with that, these are the results of what voters thought of that measure. And you can see there's a solid majority of support for the bond at 62%, 31% definitely yes, 31% probably yes, and just under a quarter actually in opposition at 24% no. So you can see that there is strong support for a bond measure moving forward. We also asked a couple of questions showing a difference in how it would be broken out, and also at a lower bond rate. So on the left, you'll see we asked voters what they thought if this measure was $98 per year or $8 a month for a median assessed value of $176,300. Similarly, $56 a year for a property value of $100,000. That associates with, if you look at the last slide, was a $144 million bond. So the results on the left is for the $144 million bond. We also asked a similar question at an $85 million bond, which is a lower dollar amount, obviously, $55 a year or $4.50 a month, and $31 a year, depending on the assessed value and property value. But you can see on the left, the $144 million bond, 59% said yes, 33% said no. But then if you look on the right, which is the lower dollar amount number, the $85 million bond, 63% support the bond, whereas 30% do not. And that shows you that there is an increase in support for a lower bond amount. So it's not black and white, but it is something to consider.
And I'll also, just for context, compared to what we see in surveys in other districts, these are actually very favorable numbers for this part of the survey. This is a part of the survey, if you think about the structure of the questionnaire, we start by asking people the question itself, and then we take a question or two, in this case a couple of questions, to really hone in on the fact that it is a tax and you're going to be paying a tax. And in most districts, or many districts, you see a much bigger drop-off in support. In this district, you find pretty clear willingness of more than 55% of your voters to support some kind of a tax increase for schools for the purposes that we described in the ballot measure. So this is actually very notable to us as we look at this. In other districts, we see a much steeper drop usually between the first question and this one. We did not see that drop here, even though there's a slight difference, as Corey noted, between the higher amount and the lower amount. So all in all, it's very encouraging. Oh, I'm sorry. And also, I did want to point out that both this question and the prior question, these numbers are higher than the numbers we saw in the similar survey that you conducted before the 2012 measure.
And to those points also, you know, this the $144 amount is at 62%, and again, it requires 55% supermajority. So we are comfortable with this bond at this point, given the percentages, and you know, those numbers may tend to drop slightly at the polls, but we're right around the area where we need to be to feel confident about a bond. And so we also tested a number of elements associated with the bond. Top priorities include training students for good paying jobs. That's actually, in the top two items here, you'll see training as kind of the key to them. So we did this on a 1 to 10 scale, where a 1 is not important at all, and a 10 is very important as an element to what the bond would include. So you can see the top one there, make sure schools have the facilities to train students for careers in good paying jobs of the future. 8.26 was the median number there, and a majority gave that a 10, meaning very important to them. Similarly, construct vocational labs and technology to train students in skilled trades. That was also strong, and you can see those top two there very much include training. The third one there, improve security and safety in every school, including upgrading fire systems, lighting, fencing, and alarms, and adding cameras. And the fourth one, update science labs and improve classroom instructional technology. That actually associates very much with the top two there. So it is really about training and providing future education, as well as improving security for the future.
We did test a number of other project priorities here, and I'll read a couple of them to you, even though they don't appear on the slide here. It's important to note that they all tested very strongly. The mean score for all of these was above 7, with at least 30% giving it the highest score of 10 in terms of most urgent to address. And they included things like making schools more accessible to the disabled, replacing aging roofs, outdated plumbing, sewer systems, outdated heating and electrical systems, excuse me, I'm sorry. Well, no, yeah, those are the repairs. We also talked a little bit about, parks and other kinds of outdoor
Where are you reading that from?
From the draft of the questionnaire itself.
Oh, it's not in this report?
Yeah, no.
Okay, can I ask you why you're still in this slide here? Apparently, one of the top 2 priorities is train students for good-paying jobs. Did the individuals that were called, did they ask for any specifics as to what types of training, what types of labs would be constructed? Did they give suggestions, or didn't you keep any of that information?
No, I mean, this is a survey that has a very limited time limit and length. We did provide information like these items, but we didn't go into heavy detail, just given the constraints of length and budget of survey research.
Okay.
So on the next slide, and this somewhat relates to the previous slide, we also asked various messages which include a lot of language you saw in the last slide, and the top-rated messages among them is preparation for the future, keeping funds local, and accountability as top-rated messages among voters. Preparing students for the future is a very strong, and you can see preparing for the future and local funds in terms of intensity at 49% and 50%, very convincing, resonated much more than the others, but the others were also very prominent, including a message describing how if we don't do anything now, things will just get worse in the future, as well as accountability. Obviously, voters want to be sure that the money is used as intended. So those are some of the key items that resonate with voters. And so we tested, we went from the initial vote, which we saw at 62% support, to just under a quarter oppose in the initial vote. After providing voters with various information, both pro and con, there was a little bit of drop-off towards the end, 57% support, but still above that 55% threshold. And it does show that if there is any opposition, which has been seen in the past, that support can drop, which kind of reiterates something for you to consider in terms of the dollar amount you want to look for a bond. And showing support by demographic groups, we look at the results by a bunch of various demographic groups, and for almost all of these groups, you will see them above the 55% threshold. Men slightly lower in support than women, who are at 65%, men at 59% in support. Younger voters are one of the highest supporting groups of the bond. Voters who are age 18 to 39 support the bond by 80%. Voters at age 40 to 49 at 57%, 50 to 64 at 55%, and voters who are over the age of 65 support a bond by 60%. By party, Democrats are also one of the higher supporters of a bond at 77%. Independents also nearly 2/3 at 61%. Republicans are below the 55% threshold, but still a plurality at 47% within their group. And by ethnicity, strong support among Latino voters. Just under 3/4 of Latino voters support the bond at 73%. White voters still above that 55% threshold at 56% who support. And then we looked at the differences between parents and non-parents. Unsurprisingly, parents show a higher support at 69% for bond, whereas non-parents, while lower still have strong support for a bond at 59%. And similarly, homeowners, whereas homeowners will be affected by a possible bond, still 56% of homeowners support the bond, and renters also at 74% are strong supporters of a possible bond measure. So given these results, we do recommend that you move forward with the school bond at a 55% supermajority that's needed. The bond is currently polling at 62%, so that makes us comfortable at the current state and thinks that it would behoove you to move forward with the bond. There is good support for a $144 million bond, but as we saw with a couple of the previous slides, a lower dollar amount for a bond does actually increase your chances for success, and if there is any kind of pushback or opposition, a lower bond amount will help you in the future. And with that, I will turn it over to Jared.
Thanks, Corey. So the last couple of points on this slide, and this is the final slide of our formal presentation. We'll be happy to take further questions from the board, obviously. In terms of remaining steps, one is to finish remaining outstanding focus groups with the community. That is the environment, Mr. Schaefer, where we've been receiving certain more detailed, in-depth feedback from people about different types of labs and other things that people are concerned about seeing. And so in that context, I know staff's been receiving input from the community. So being sure that we've gotten to all those groups, we've answered questions that people have raised, that's mostly done, but finalize those. The biggest questions, finalize authorization amount. As Corey has alluded, there's a range here. We tested 144 million, which it seems like a good and meaningful investment to your community. The poll results support that number. There is indication in the poll that a lower amount, something less than 144 million, might also be seen as meaningful to your voters. Still accomplish some of the important goals that you have, but be a little bit lighter for the taxpayer. So some sort of compromise may make sense for you as a board to consider, and you have to until next week to finalize that thinking. And then ultimately place the measure on the ballot prior to the August 8th legal deadline, and that deadline is not a deadline for your action. It's a deadline to actually submit completed paperwork to the county. Again, I know Ms. Wells would be able to elaborate on some of those steps if you like, but the board should not wait until the 8th to take action. I believe you have a regular meeting already scheduled a week from now, so you could at that meeting consider taking action, and that would be in enough time for that August 8th deadline in order to be on this November election ballot. And just as a reminder, if you do not, because this type of bond can only be on in a regularly scheduled election, not at a special election, if you miss this election, we have to look for the next state primary or general election, which would be 2016, in order to pick up these issues again and consider them.
Any other questions? Ms. Schaefer?
Just a couple of questions. You will be making a presentation of this to what other groups in the community?
Not of these results, but the focus group presentation that staff has been giving about the need for a bond, reporting on the facilities committee work, the fact that the board is looking at a bond, continuing and completing those presentations, which I think are basically wrapped up at this point anyway.
There were quite a few questions on that survey, I understand. Do you have a list of them, how they responded? These aren't all the questions you asked, correct?
No, that's right. Yes, we do. We can provide that.
Could you provide that?
Yes.
I would appreciate that. And we will be voting on this at the next board meeting, which is 1 week from tonight?
You will have a board study session prior to the meeting, and then at the meeting, it will be up to the board to make a determination. First of all, if you wish to move forward and put a bond issue on the November ballot, and if you do, what the size of that issue is. So the answer is yes. Well, I guess if you don't take any action, you won't vote on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Johnson?
In any of these questions that you asked, did it ever come up about employment? Who was employed, or if anyone was unemployed? Did employment come up at all in the discussion?
No, that wasn't actually a question we asked specifically. The only items we really got to there was were things about training for the future and future jobs. But no, we didn't specifically ask, for instance, a demographic question on employment.
I wish I'd have thought of that when we had the questions, because we have to assume that everyone, in the big percentages that were positive, we have to assume that all these people were currently employed, and you probably can't really make that assumption. It's really hard to ask the residents to support a bond to start with. I think we need to be sure that we're going out for definite needs, not for extras. Anything that we can absorb in regular expenses throughout the year, we need to keep, hold that back out of a bond. So I'm not convinced. The numbers seem a little bit too rosy to me. I know that marketing could maybe change that. And I think that a lower bond amount might be something a little bit easier for the community to take. These are big numbers for residents, and they're going to go, oh my gosh, I got to pay for this, and look at the size of the bond. And so, we have to sell it if we all decide that this is the way to go. And we have to be able to tell them that we really, need this money to bring this district up in the shape that it needs to be, repair old schools, install technology. I mean, there's a lot of positive things that we need to do, and we do need to do them because some of these schools are so old. They're not getting any younger. Things aren't going to get any better. They deteriorate more. Roofs, cement, plumbing, bathrooms, I mean, all those issues that we have. But we need to be very careful that we are focusing on the basics and the needs. And on the suggestion that they seem to all want their kids to be educated and ready for a career. And that tells me that they're more concerned with what goes on in the classroom. Wouldn't you think? I mean, it looks like they're not really willing to support building labs and all the other things that we really need to support that, but it seems they're more trained students for careers and good paying jobs, and they probably think we don't need the other stuff. They think it might be fluff. So this is what I'm thinking as a taxpayer, and we need to be sensitive to what people are really going to be paying for, how long they're going to be paying. The other thing too, when you have renters and they had a high positive, but in that renters column was also includes parents. So on the other side, the left side are parents of children under 18, the other side was home ownership. But under the 74% of those under home ownership that supported, those were, the renters was 74%, the homeowners were 56%. So that tells me that's the homeowners are a little bit, it's a little bit more a stretch for them than it is. And everyone has kids in school, of course. If you have kids in school, grandkids in school, you want to support it. But anyway, those are a lot of the things that I'm thinking for what it's worth.
Just one quick response. First of all, my understanding is this is a sampling survey. So basically you should hit a proportionate number of unemployed people, employed people, old people, young people, and basically representative of the community. And I know the questions were specifically asked in reference to facilities, but I think, Trustee Johnston, you made the most important point, and that is if you choose to put a bond on the ballot, it should be a bond that you as a board and as board members individually are committed to, feel is necessary for the district, isn't fluff, and can't be paid for in other ways. And so that's been a lot of the data that's been brought through the facilities committee, and that you'll have it your you've already had it at your disposal, but again, as you consider it next week, frankly, if the board cannot support a bond, it will be, you shouldn't vote for it. I mean, plain and simple, it should be something you believe is important for the children of the community and that is important for the schools and provides, for example, the career tech facilities, whether it's equipment, whether it's classroom facilities, whether it's computers or whatever, to provide training. And so I think that was the one thing you said, that they were concerned about the training and what happens in the classroom, but it's basically, I believe the way the question was asked was, are the tools there rather than are the teachers capable? I think we fully believe our teachers are capable. It's the tools that they have to provide that training. So.
And if I might, the board member raised a number of good questions. I wanted to try and respond to a few of them as you were going here. One is, as the superintendent points out, the sample that we asked is a likely November 14 sample. In other words, it is made up of the percentages that the electorate will be made up of. So whatever number of unemployed people versus employed people versus retired people are in the actual electorate in November, this survey is meant to model that. So for example, you can see 27, doesn't show on the slide, but Corey's telling me 27% of the respondents were actually 65 and older. So it's not like the parents in your schools. And fully 64% were 50 and older. So it's almost 2/3 of the people who responded to the survey were 50 years or older, which in most cases does not mean that they currently have school-age kids. Some cases they do, but largely they don't. So there's certainly lots of retired people in that age bracket. So there's lots of folks taking the survey that are retired, are certainly unemployed, or employed. It's based on their likelihood of voting. That's why they get selected into it. So the match should be a very good, it's only a snapshot in time, things can change between today and November, but it should be a very good demographic match. And frankly, the 2012 survey, which this firm also conducted for you, was pretty much spot on in terms of the numbers that it predicted. It put us right at about 57% as a best case scenario, which is where we were with the early absentee ballot returns in that election, and about 53% of strong opposition emerged, which is where we finished, after strong opposition had emerged. So that survey, which this firm also conducted of a similar sample size, basically hit the nail right on the head in terms of its numbers. So, and in terms of it being a little bit rosy, I agree, it's certainly stronger numbers than we saw in 2012. That's common for us around the state and even in Riverside County as the economy has started to improve. And I know that it hasn't improved equally in all places at all times, but it is true, and lots of statewide polling also supports this, that voters in general feel better about the economy now than they did 2 and 3 years ago. They feel like the worst is over, that it is starting to turn around. In many cases, people are already feeling that difference. And so it is common for us to see numbers this year that are better than numbers that we saw in 2012, and certainly the June election, where school bonds were very successful statewide. Paris Elementary School, 68% support for their bond. We're seeing, voters respond in the way that they're polling and suggest that they would respond. So I would take the numbers seriously, not in any way to discount the, significance of the challenges before you. And I thought the superintendent, raised a good point, which is to say, we learned in this community, definitely, credible opposition can have an impact. And so it will be important, if this goes on the ballot, for everybody to get out and work for it. And that's something that's going to have to happen. Everybody is going to have to stand behind it and push together. And that will, give you a chance, I think, to achieve this 62%, number or something very close to it.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, did you have any questions or comments? Are you still there with us, Cheryl? Can she hear us?
I am still there. I just have I don't have any questions. I've looked at it, understand it, look forward to the study session next Tuesday, not Monday.
I have one more comment. I was just happening to think about the older, not elderly, but the older voter voting in a positive way. Some of them may be raising their grandkids, or their children are working and they pretty much are raising them. because they're there during the day. They probably take them to school and pick them up. And so I don't know what percentage that is, but
We'll look up the exact number, but it was something like 32 to 34% of the sample. In other words, the respondents to the survey, the likely November 2014 electorate, have children under the age of 18 living in their home. So whether they're under 50 themselves or over 65 themselves, about a third of the likely voters will have children under 18, which means 2/3 of them will not, though. And so it is important to think about what the non-parents and the older folks, do think. But that's one of the advantages of a survey like this, is it gets us beyond, our school site communities into the likely voter community, and we get to hear what they have to say.
If there are no more questions, then we thank you very much for the report and the research that the work you put behind it to get the information to us. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, moving on then to item B. Report on transition to Common Core state standards and local control funding formula. Mr. Dabrowski.
Thank you. I want to start with just a quick comment on local control funding formula and the local control accountability plan. As you know, at our last board meeting, you approved those documents and they were sent into the county, and the feedback we received was very positive. We're still waiting because they haven't sent any formalized approval, but given the initial feedback as they went through it and provided feedback, they were very appreciative and felt like it was a great document. So we're excited about that. On the Common Core front, we've had teachers hard at work all summer long. We've talked a lot about our units of study that are being developed by groups of teachers in both language arts and math. And our teachers have done an amazing amount of work throughout the summer to complete those in a way that is of high quality so that their peers will be successful in implementing them. I counted up the known hours of work, and these are just the known hours where teachers came in and worked, not when they were working at home. But we had over 2,440 hours worked by our teachers on completing these units of study. And in addition to that, about 400 hours of translation so that all of our dual immersion programs will have successful Spanish-based materials as well. Those units of studies are nearing completion, and at our next board meeting next week, I'll share with you one grade levels unit of study so you can get a feel for what it is and what it contains and how it looks. At the same time, our technology department has been hard at work at implementing the digital platform where these units and materials will reside. It's going to be a great space. It's ready now. We're setting it up. It will have all of the materials that the teachers have developed, the resources that are suggested or offered by teachers for use, strategies, things like that. There'll be a forum area where teachers can discuss with other teachers, what works, what's the best idea. There's a coaches corner where our newly hired instructional coaches can answer questions and provide feedback. It's very exciting. Tonight, you'll see on your agenda later, we're recommending that you purchase iPads for those teachers who are on the units of study, which will enable them to not only continue that work, but really be at the forefront of implementing instructional technology in their classrooms. And our coaches, the instructional coaches that we hired in the spring, will begin their work officially tomorrow. They'll all be in a training, and they'll be receiving many days of training over the next several months in the art of coaching and in the technical skills that they'll need to be highly successful in that role. And on August 6th and 7th, all of our teachers will be receiving training. For our elementary teachers, our transitional kindergarten through second grade teachers will be at Sunny Slope receiving language arts implementation Common Core training, and our third through sixth grade teachers will be at West Riverside receiving the same training. There's too many of them to fit at one school. Our secondary teachers will be in 5 different places. Our language arts teachers in one place, math teachers in a second place, social studies in another place, science in another place, and then technical subjects, meaning those teachers that teach art, PE, classes that don't fall into any of the 4 core categories will be at another place, and they will all be receiving training and collaborating and planning for implementation. And then, and those trainings will be at Patriot, at Rubidoux, at Mission Middle, at Miraloma, and at the PDC. So there's a ton of stuff going on. And next week I'll report back and give you a little deeper look into those units of study, and you can kind of get a sense for what they contain and what they look like.
One question. You know, when we initially talked about coaching, had a little bit of a discussion on how that would work. Do you now know how exactly that's going to work in a classroom, and how many coaches you have, and are they matched up with a teacher in a classroom, and how does that work?
I can give you most of those answers now. Some of them are kind of still being developed in terms of the matching with teachers and things like that. But the coaches, and it looks a little different between elementary and secondary. At the elementary level, they're in pairs. So for example, a first grade classroom will have 2 coaches, and those coaches will spend 50% of their time teaching in the classroom and 50% of their time out coaching, working with other teachers. At the same time, that classroom will be sort of a model demonstration classroom where if there are 2 partners and one is teaching and one is working with another teacher to implement some new strategy, those 2 can come back and observe the partner teacher demonstrating that strategy in the classroom. So that's roughly the elementary way. In the secondary, teachers don't have to share because they have 6 periods during the day. So our secondary coaches will teach 2 periods, they'll have their prep and transport period, and then they will coach 3 periods. So they will spend half of their day teaching and half of their day coaching. And there are 6 coaches at the secondary level, 3 in language arts and 3 in math. So in terms of exactly which teachers and exactly how that will look, that's still sort of a work in progress. And they'll spend the first several weeks, you know, in training and learning the skills to be a really successful coach, and in preparing for that job, and then begin to spend their time at an increasingly higher level coaching.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then we'll move on to item C, Williams Settlement Quarterly Uniform Complaint Report Summary. Mr. Dabrowski.
We had 0 complaints.
That was easy, thank you. And good to hear. Item D, consider nomination for CSBA 2014 Legislative Awards Program. Mr. Sean.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Last year you nominated Senator Richard Roth, and I believe he got that award from CSBA. You have to nominate a legislator who serves this district, so and you're not required to nominate anybody, but we do not do it by a vote, we do it by consensus, so you may make a nomination or not.
Due by September 12th, 2014, correct?
So you can think about it also.
Okay. Thank you.
We can think about it and maybe squeeze some of these politicians for a little, no? Donation?
Okay, item E, any other administrative reports and written communications?
There are none.
Okay, thank you. We're on to action session. Item A, approve routine items by consent.
Make a motion to approve routine action items by consent.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer and second by Ms. Johnston. Do we need a roll call? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Okay, we're on to item B. Oh, the item passes 4-0, 5-0. Oh, 4-0, that's right, 4-0. Item passes 4-0. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. You have 5 cards, but you only listen to 4 speakers, and I was one of the speakers for the opening round. So I don't know if you would allow me to speak for a couple of minutes.
I don't have a key card. You took it apart?
Yeah, I did. Would it be possible for me to speak, or? Sure. Sorry to interrupt. Sure, come on. I'm sorry. Amanda Granato. I have an 11-year-old daughter, Zanata, who's autistic, and we are actually not from this area. I just moved here this last year. We came from a small town. And my daughter is attending Pedley Elementary and is in Miss Pelagie's class. So she definitely had a rough year in the beginning because it was quite an adjustment. But towards the end of the year, I truly believe that my daughter's in the best program possible. So when it came about that there was going to be a change to another school, this was before even a letter came out that I heard that there was going to be this change, and I didn't waste any time. I contacted Michelle Johnson and explained my concerns for not just my daughter, but the other students that are in her class. And Michelle Johnson basically told me that it was a done deal, that that my concerns were not valid. And so having my daughter established at Pedley Elementary was huge. She's not only made friends with her classmates, but the general ed peers. And for someone that doesn't know my daughter to just make that kind of decision, and not even like, I don't expect you guys to just contact me out of the blue and be like, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing, but to kind of like really think about, you know, we're the ones that have to transition our children. We're the ones that need the time. We need to be able to discuss the options between. We're not working against each other. We need to work together in order to have our children be successful. We're trying to raise productive adults. And even after that, I did talk with Mr. Duchamp. I called him. He returned my phone call and told me that Michelle Johnson would be calling me back to discuss it. She did call me back. The questions that she was asking me is whether my daughter has established friendships with the general ed peers. And then the next question was, well, does she do things after school with these kids? So if I had said no, then what does that mean? That my daughter has not established friendships, that she is not capable of doing that, that because she's moving with her classmates, then she's going to be okay. My oldest daughter, who does not have any special needs, attended Mission Middle and started out okay. I felt that she was doing well. And then there was an incident where my daughter was she was beat up at school. Went in to talk to the assistant principal and was basically just kind of told what I wanted to hear, and nothing kind of continued. We only had 3 weeks left of school, so I didn't really push the issue. My daughter will not be attending Mission Middle next year for the 8th grade. I am moving her to a different school, but I'm supposed to send my daughter with special needs to Mission Middle School. I'm not assured of her safety there. I spoke with Mr. Duchamp again regarding those issues, and you know, we can't like establish numbers that, oh, well, there's more bullying, there's more fights at Mission Middle School than any other middle school, and I understand that. But I need to send my daughter to the best possible program and have her established with her peers that she's established with. I've recently moved to the Riverside School District, and I have applied for a transfer because I believe Pedley Elementary is the best place for my daughter. So her being with her peers and the general ed peers, there is a zero tolerance at Pedley Elementary as far as bullying goes. They establish those relationships. When I'm walking on campus and there's a general ed peer that comes up to my daughter and asks her how she's doing, how was your weekend, what are you planning on doing, is this your mom? They've taken that time to establish that with my daughter, and I would like for her to continue to do that. The other thing that was told to me by Michelle Johnson is that because I had I had to express to her, these parents don't want their kids to be moved. We're the ones that have to transition. It's going to be really rough for them. And the answer that was given back to me was that you don't know that because you don't know the other parents and what they're thinking. I do know. I have a daughter with special needs. All these parents here that are concerned, they're here at this board meeting because they are concerned. There's a chance that I won't send my child to Mission Middle School because of the environment. She will not be able to continue what she's established at Pedley, and that's unfortunate. But I have to do what's best for my daughter. But with that being said, I'm still here because I feel that these parents need a voice. Nobody's listening to us. Nobody's taking the time to confer with parents and like really listen to them. Mr. Duchamp took the time to meet with me, and I appreciate that time. But again, like I don't really feel that we're being heard. Like one problem's been fixed. We still have a huge problem that we're supposed to send our children to Mission Middle School. And the program that's set up, my options are to meet with the Mission Middle School principal to discuss his program when it really doesn't matter because my daughter's peers are not going to Mission Middle School. They're going to Mariloma. So these, moving a program, you guys were quick to move it to Rustic Lane. Like, I was like, you just moved a program like very quickly. Like, why isn't that an option for Mariloma? Well, the answer is Mariloma is in not a good location, but Rustic Lane, the social story that was sent to us to explain to our children just made our children anxious. I'm going to have to go to a different school. I don't know anybody there. It's possible the same staff's not going to be there. Like, these are huge changes for our children. And Michelle Johnson basically told me that my daughter just has to deal with it, that life's full of ups and downs. We need the opportunity to be able to teach our children that because they struggle with that from day to day, the ups and downs of life. And I'm not understanding why that's not an option for us. You know, I moved down here because there's better programs, there's better services. I don't discount the work at Mission Middle School. I'm sure their special education program, the teachers, the aides that work there, I think they probably do an awesome job, but the environment is not the safest. The program apparently is not the best if you have a child regressing, and nobody takes the time to notice that. So what's the answer here? Do we not talk to each other? Do we not do decisions just be made for our children?
Thank you. We will definitely have this looked into by the staff and definitely have them get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like
Yeah, I normally don't respond, but I know you're all concerned about your children. The initial decision to move the program was based on parent input. Apparently, there was other parent input, and Mrs. Johnson, as well as other people, did listen to you, and that's why the program's being retained at Pedley. We will be contacting you through the year. The program has had a long-standing history of the students going from Pedley to Mission Middle School. I believe they then go to Rubidal High School. No, they go to Patriot High School, and then the adults transition to Rubidal High School. So we will be looking at the program. I'm not going to tell you that we are going to necessarily move it where you want it to be moved. It's a question of what's the best place for the program and meet the program needs. I will tell you that just if the program were to be moved, the staff would follow the program. The staff are with the program. So, that's the staff who are at Mission Middle School are trained staff to work with that particular class. So generally, they follow the program. I'm not going to get into a dialogue. We will talk with you through the year. Your children have a right to privacy. You certainly have a right to share it, but I couldn't respond if you brought up anything in regard to any individual child, because they have a right to privacy, so do you. We will be working with a deliberate process this year. It was, I can assure you, it was not intended to do anything but act in the best interest in the children, and I apologize if it didn't. And we will look at it through the year.
Well, I apologize. I should have mentioned it earlier. Myself and all the other parents, I wish Michelle Johnson were here. I don't like to talk about people when they're not for me. We do want to ask her for her and you for her resignation. Do we or not? Yes! We do. So, and we're going to continue until it happens.
Well, you may do that. I will not discuss her as a staff member, nor will that be discussed as part of the solution for the problem.
She is the problem. Am I right? Yep. Thank you.
The problem was that nobody even.
You know, I normally don't, I'm going to tell you, I normally don't respond because dialogue in the board meeting is not the appropriate place. I was reluctant to respond. I would ask that you respect that and respect Mrs. Johnson. You may submit a complaint if that's your complaint. We cannot discuss a staff member.
There will be follow-up discussions and communication, though, to work with you. So, yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on. Then we're to item B, pre-qualified architectural construction management firms to provide services on qualifying projects for the year 2014-2015. Mrs. Ford.
Yes, as part of a new legislation that came about January 1st, 2014, Assembly Bill 1565 and Public Contract Code requires that we pre-qualify vendors who may potentially work on projects that would have an estimated value of $1 million or more, and or are funded with state bond funds. And this is an annual process, and we did go through a public notice which was issued inviting vendors to submit the pre-qualification packets for both architectural and construction management services. We had 5 architectural firms and 3 construction firms respond. All responding firms went through a preliminary process because we had an outside third party do that preliminary screening process where they looked at financial, they looked at bonding capacity, all of those types of things. And those who met that preliminary screening process then were interviewed, and it resulted in WLC, Renault and Clark, HMC, and A for E being pre-qualified for architectural services, and Neff Construction and Paul C. Miller for construction management services. And administration recommends the board pre-qualify architectural and construction management firms to provide services on qualified projects for the 2014-15 school year.
Comments or questions?
I have a question.
Mr. Schaefer.
These are for projects $1 million or greater. Is this anticipation of if a bond does pass, is this what we're qualifying them to work on projects if the bond passes?
Yes, this could be part of that. It also could be another project if the bond, if it's not a bond project, it may be another project that's $1 million or more. So it would be any project over at $1 million or over $1 million.
Has the district, we haven't approved, but does the district ask the board to approve who will be building this new elementary school?
Yes, we would be bringing that to you.
Would it be one of these construction firms?
If it were to start, this is an annual process, so if the construction were to start this year, yes. Okay. But we will have to do this annually, so this pre-qualification has to happen on an annual basis.
The last time this was before Measure M, if I recall. There hasn't been anything in 2 years, am I wrong?
This is a new law.
This is a new law that just came into...
I'm sorry. So what happened before, the district voluntarily pre-qualified companies, both for construction management and for architectural services. Since 1565 passed, in order to let any contract for architectural or construction management services for a project over $1 million, it's the project total, correct?
Yes.
So, for example, even if you were to do a facade at a group of classrooms, you have to have pre-qualified architects and construction managers for it. So it's whether, even if there's not any bond at all, for the new elementary school, for any renovations that might be done, any state monies, even emergency portables.
The reason I asked, because the last time I saw this was before Measure M, and right after that, one of these companies donated money for the promotion of the bond. Have any of these companies been asked to, if this bond does pass, to consider donating to the promotion of this bond if it does pass the board? Has anyone? Okay, that's the last time I saw this type of a document. The other thing is, with Neff Construction, do we know how many employees they have? Do they have construction employees? And Paul Miller, do they have
They do, and that was one of our considerations with any construction company, is that they actually they don't sub out all of their work, that they actually have construction employees, and they do.
Can you get those numbers, please?
Sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll undertake a motion.
I make the motion that we pre-qualify the agritextile and construction management firm to provide services on the qualifying projects for the 2014-15 year.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have first by Ms. Motion by Ms. Smith and a second by Ms. Johnston. All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Next item, award contract for integrated meeting and agenda management software. Mrs. Ford?
Okay. This is another item that's to be in compliance with and this is to comply with the State of California open meeting laws. Administration is requesting approval to purchase an integrated meeting and agenda management software system. It's an electronic solution that creates, approves, and tracks agenda items for board meetings, as well as tracking and recording the motions and the votes. Staff reviewed and tested several systems. Novus Agenda was found to be the system that best met the district needs, and it was the only vendor to provide a written proposal. The system has an initial purchase price of $8,700, and it has an annual maintenance of $7,950. It'll be funded out of a special reserve funds for capital outlay.
And this is also a new legislative law that took effect, right, for this year?
Yes.
And this would include moving our agendas from binders to online systems?
Yes.
And along with the tabulating of the votes and everything?
Right. So it would be on online devices.
How soon would we be getting the online software to? As soon as let's get this,
Yeah.
this purchase is made.
We'll see how quick Mr. Lewis can get it all installed and up and running.
Oh, okay. Any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Ms. Smith. Oh, roll call vote.
I have one
comment?
question
Okay.
about the equipment now. If we move to paperless agendas, which would save us a lot of money and time, does that mean, are we going to provide, and I have an iPad, is it going to be able to load it on my own iPad, or how are you going to do that with the board members?
Yeah, we asked for it to be, what's the word we want, device agnostic or something like that. Doesn't matter.
So it could be on multiple platforms.
Multiple platforms.
I think what I'm asking is this including whatever the board needs, or are we going to provide our own? Which I'm happy with providing my own iPad, but...
We had discussed purchasing a device for the board to use, for each board member to use.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then we have a first made motion by Mr. Schaefer and a second by Ms. Schmidt. Was that the way it was? Yes. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item passes 4-0. Item D, award contract for tree trimming services at Camino Real Elementary School. Mrs. Ford.
Make a motion to approve the contract for tree trimming at Camino Real.
Motion by Mr.
I
Schaefer,
second.
second by Mrs. Johnston.
No.
Oh, by Ms. Schmidt. Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item passes 4-0. Item E, approve lease purchase of district vehicles for maintenance and operations. Mrs. Ford.
Make a motion to approve the lease purchase of district vehicles for maintenance and operations.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer. Comments or second? Second by Ms. Johnston. If there are no comments or questions, roll call vote.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item carries 4-0. Item F, approve purchase of instruments for elementary music program. Mrs. Ford.
I make the motion that we approve the purchase of the instruments for the elementary music program.
Motion.
Award-winning.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mrs. Johnson. No questions or comments. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item G, approve purchase of Apple iPad Airs and cases for units of study curriculum writers. Mrs. Ford.
Make a motion to approve the purchase of Apple iPad Airs and cases for units of study.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer.
I'll second.
Mr. Smith seconds. No comments or questions. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item passes 4-0. Item H, approve purchase of iPad Airs and related equipment for kindergarten use. Mrs. Ford.
I make the motion that we approve the purchase of the iPad Airs and related equipment for kindergarten use.
Motion by Mrs. Schmidt. Do I hear a second or comments or questions?
I'll make the second, but I have a little bit of problem with kindergartners. Can you tell me how they're going to manage it? Because I know grown-ups that can't keep from dropping their iPads and their cell phones and cracking the surface.
Well, if you'll notice on this particular item, we are also ordering the OtterBox Defender Series protective covers. And so those they surround the iPad and give it cushion for in case it's dropped. So, and they're designed for that specific purpose. So, but this is something that the teachers and principals discussed that they really wanted to have at their schools because of all of the wonderful educational programs that are on the iPads, especially for your lower grades and learning your sounds and your letters and all of that interactivity.
So they're also used by more than one class, so they transport it in and out, right?
Every class would have 6 in the classroom.
That's not very many.
So, and it's 11 schools that decided this is what they wanted to do, and they wanted to use these.
Is there another device other than an iPad with kindergartners where we could possibly furnish it to all of them? I mean, they're very savvy at using this stuff. My grandkids can use those things better than I can, but I don't know what's available for young ones.
Well, do you want to? Yeah, I'll let Dave take that.
The iPad is well used and well documented. It has a great number of apps. It's it's supportable. Our technical staff is able to support and manage that. So I think you'll see that there may be other devices that you may even hear about one tonight that they'll begin to test and use. But right now, the iPad is the best thing out there for us at this moment, and has the best apps that our kindergarten students would be most successful at using.
What about the internet access? They won't have that, will they, for kindergartners, or will they? Have to download from the internet? Or?
They would have managed access just like they would for those that actually have the computers in the room. Those also have managed internet access as well, but it would be managed in the same way.
Just a follow-up comment, too. As you point out, this is an issue we'll have to deal with at all grade levels, because in the next probably less than 5 years, curriculum and materials are going to be available only on devices. And one of our concerns, and we are later on the agenda looking at another device that may be a possibility. There have been a number of districts that have done wholesale purchases of less costly devices that haven't worked as well. And just a comment, if any board member would like the OtterBox for their device, we could order some. And we've ordered some for selected adults in the district.
I may be needing one. Any other comments or questions?
I have one more question. With, with computers, we know how often we're going to replace those. I think if you don't have an idea, or if you will have to devise a plan for replacement of these kinds of iPads and other equipment that we use. Is that correct?
Yes, these would fall into the same replacement cycle that we're using for computers. They have roughly the same lifetime, which is in between a 4 and 5 year lifespan. So we would be looking at replacements at that time when they come up.
Are we going to get rich or something and be able to buy this stuff every 5 years, right?
Well, it's not all of it at once, though. If we buy it, then it's a rotational that we continue to update.
In this day and age, I don't think we have much of an option, do we? Okay, we have a motion that was made for approval by Mr. Smith and a second by Mrs. Johnston. Are we ready for a roll call vote? Item I, approve submittal of the 2014-2015 consolidated application. Mr. Dubrowski.
So now that we have our LCAP, that's changed the way we receive state funding, but our federal funds remain the same. And so for our Title I, Title II, and Title III programs, we yearly submit our consolidated application. So this is phase 1 of that. We submit the application now, and later in the year when the actual funding amounts come in, we'll ask you to again approve the consolidated app Part 2.
Of the 2014-15 consolidated application.
Motion for approval by Mr. Schaefer. Second? Second by Mr. Smith. All those in favor? Roll call vote.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Item is approved for. Item J, approve waiver request for Casey State graduation requirements. Mr. Dubrowski.
I make the motion that we accept the waiver request for graduation requirements.
Motion for approval by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Johnston. Questions or comments? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item carries 4-0. Item K, review for approval or denial of kindergarten acceleration request. Mr. Dubrowski.
Thank you. Pursuant to Ed Code 4800C1, any student who will have his or her fifth birthday between September 2nd and December 2nd shall be admitted to a transitional kindergarten program maintained by the school district. Parents may request acceleration from a transitional kindergarten program into a traditional kindergarten program, and we have one such request. After reviewing the request and providing some assessments, the principal has made the recommendation that you deny the acceleration request for one transitional kindergarten student number 1026269-137 at Mission Bell Elementary School.
Need a motion for the item here?
Make a motion to deny the request. Is the parent here to speak at all? Oh, okay. Make a motion to deny the request.
I'll second.
Motion to deny the request by Mr. Schaefer and second by Mr. Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item carries 4-0. Item L, adopt resolution number 2015/01, Child Development Contract. Mr. Dabrowski.
Thank you. This is our...
I make the motion that we adopt the resolution number 2015-01, the Child Development Contract.
Motion to approve by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mrs. Johnston. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer? Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Item carries 4-0. Item M, adopt resolution number 2015/03, establish Community Facilities District number 11 and authorize the levy of a special tax within said Community Facilities District. Mrs. Ford.
Okay, so this is number 11, and this is out in the west end of the district where all the new development is happening. This CFD number 11 is actually split into two areas. One is D.R. Horton, and the other is Wheelock, and they're referred to as areas A and B. And they have presented an offer to enter into a school facilities mitigation funding agreement for the formation of the CFD. And this is a financing mechanism that will provide the district with funds that will be imposed on the new residential and commercial development that will go towards a new school. And CFD, this particular CFD is proposed to include two separate areas, as I mentioned, 217 units in Area A, 206 units in Area B, and the total proceeds would be $5,400,233 to the district.
Vice
Move to
comments?
approve.
Go ahead.
I make the motion to approve the resolution as recommended. Resolution number 2015/03, establish Community Facility District number 11 and authorize the levy of a special tax within said Community Facility District.
Motion to approve by Mrs. Johnson, second by Mr. Schaefer. Questions or comments?
This is, will we be part of, isn't, let's say, improvement area A, like a $16 million bond, and we will be getting the 2.7 million, and B is like a $18 million bond? Are we part of that or not?
Yes, this would be our portion, our JUSD share.
Okay.
So this is showing our actual portion.
And this will go toward the building of the elementary school?
Yes, building the new K-6
So how much
school.
do we have so far to build that? Don't we have 14 plus whatever this is? That will be going toward that
Towards
elementary
that.
school?
Yeah, well, it would be 14 all together. I'll have to get my numbers to make sure that I have them all. But this was another $5 million that we had included in that amount.
Which we will need eventually, what, about $21 and $22 million?
Yes, right now we're estimating about $22 million for an elementary school.
Now, the largest CFD is on the corner of Limonite and Wineville, I think 900 or over 1,000 homes, I don't have the numbers. 100, I think 138 homes out of that number is I think, $11 million bond. What about the other 800 homes? Will that eventually be bonded out?
Rachel's here. She may be able to answer that. She's been working closely with the developers.
Good evening, members of the board. I'm Rachel Chen from the Linker Group, and we have been and being in communication with the developer community on behalf of the school district. So to answer your question, Mr. Schaefer, the only conversation that we started with the developers is only for the 300 unit, which you refer to at the corner of that CFD number 8 location. So we understand that there are still land right next to the 300 unit development. However, at this point, we have not received a request. The developers are looking towards to potentially exploring a formation of CFD in the future.
And as Mr. Schaefer, as we mentioned, the developers are not being as ambitious as they have been in the past. They're being very cautious, and so they're not building like they have in the past, where it was 1,000 units and they built them all at once, and so that's also something that we're seeing. They're taking chunks at a time, and they're building that way, and we're developing the CFDs as that happens.
Could we get an update on next to Patriot, those homes going in? When could we get an update on them?
Absolutely. We have requested absorption schedule to be provided, and as soon as we receive those, we'll provide them to staff and the board.
Okay, there are no more questions or comments. We're ready for a roll call vote.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Item carries 4-0. Item N, adopt resolution number 2015/05, emergency resolution to replace the HVAC units at Rubidoux High School. Mrs. Ford.
Make a motion to adopt resolution 2014-05, emergency resolution to replace HVAC units at Rubidoux with a question.
Second.
Okay, we have first and a second. Question?
Are we keeping a tally of what these hooligans are doing to our HVAC systems?
Yeah,
Can we have a list or a total, what they've done so far this year, and how many cages we have built, and maybe we could build a cage for them?
Yes.
How about ankle bracelets?
The answer is yes to everything except the last statement.
I was wondering if we have any information on districts that have been able to provide camera surveillance equipment at their sites, and whether they have seen a reduction in terms of vandalism and this type of damage to their schools. And if so, that would be, again, one of the items that's listed as a potential item they could serve us in terms of obtaining some bond measures or some other means of providing that type of security system.
Absolutely, and one of the things that we're looking at is looking at a new security system, and we brought that to the board quite a while ago, but we are working through all the specifications for that. It's quite a large project for the entire district, and as we look at that new security system, we will be looking at the cost of cameras and putting cameras in as well.
Yes, go ahead.
There's a company on the East Coast, I'll try to find it, but they've got little drones that fly around at night with night vision, okay? We've got to find them. We've got to find them.
Okay, we won't go into the drone discussion at this time. You do, huh? Now you forgot who seconded it. Mr. Schaefer, I believe you made the motion. Second was by Mrs. Johnson. Okay, we have a person by Mr. Schaefer and a second by Mrs. Johnston. A roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item carries 4-0. Item O, adopt at second reading ordinance number 2014/02, ordinance of the Board of Education for the Jurupa Unified High School District, acting as a legislative body of the Community Facilities District number 9 of the Jurupa Unified School District, authorizing the levy of a special tax. Mrs. Ford.
Make a motion to adopt at second reading ordinance number 2014-02 as stated by Mr. Mendez.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mrs. Johnston. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Item P, adopt at second reading ordinance number 2014/03, ordinance of the Board of Education for the Jurupa Unified School District acting as a legislative body of the Community Facilities District number 10 of the Jurupa Unified School District, authorizing the levy of a special tax. Mrs. Ford.
Make a motion to adopt at second reading ordinance number 2014-03 as stated by Mr. Mendez.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Schaefer, seconded by Mrs. Johnson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Item Q, approve personnel matters. Approve personnel report number 1. Mrs. Elsig.
Excuse me. Thank you. And before we move forward with approving the personnel report, I did have 2 additional items to report out from closed session. The board voted in closed session by a 4-0 vote to accept the resignation of classified employee number 085963. The board also voted in closed session with a 4-0 vote to approve the resignation agreement of certificated employee number 219676. Administration recommends approval of personnel report number 1 as printed.
Need a motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second. Oh, go ahead.
second by Mr. Schaefer. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Item number 2, adopt 2014-2015 Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators. Mrs. Elzig.
Make a motion to approve, adopt 2014-2015 Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer,
I'll second.
second by Mrs. Schmidt. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Thank you. Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Item number 3, approve CBEST waiver for day-to-day substitute teachers. Ms. Elsig.
I'll make the motion to approve the waiver of CBEST for day-to-day substitute teachers.
Motion by Mrs. Smith. Second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Johnson. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Next item, adopted first reading revised board policy 4350, management leadership team confidential confidential employees. Ms. Elsig.
Make a motion to adopt at first reading revised board policy 4350, management leadership team confidential employees.
Motion made by Mr. Schaefer. Second by Mrs. Johnston. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Item 5, adopt at first reading revised board policy 4350.1, management leadership team classified employees. Ms. Selzig.
Make a motion to adopt at first reading revised board policy 4350.1, management leadership team classified employees.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mrs. Johnston. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Next item, approve at first reading revised board policy 4350.3, management leadership team administrative employees. Mrs. Selzig.
Make a motion to approve at first reading revised board policy 4350.3, administrative employees.
Motion made by Mr. Schaefer, second by Mrs. Johnston. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Johnston?
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer?
Yes.
Trustee Mendez?
Yes.
Trustee Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you. Item passes 4-0. Last item, board member comments and committee reports. We'll start with you, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there tonight, and sorry that it is
Thank you. Mrs. Johnston?
I also feel for the Hernandez family. I'm sorry for their loss, and yes, we all miss him. Bobby was man about town. He was in every organization that I have attended in the city. Forgot what else I was going to say. Okay, that's it.
Long night. Mr. Schaefer.
Bobby, someone once said that no man or woman is indispensable. We will find out in next coming weeks, months, and years. Bobby was Mr. Jurupa. He was at every community event. He belonged to, I think, every community organization. And if he didn't, he was there. He was opinionated. Some didn't like his brashness sometimes, but he gave his opinion. He loved this community, and I spoke to him July 3rd, and he spoke about the students of Jurupa Unified School District. We were talking about this bond measure, about career tech, about college. He was always talking about the kids. Even when he wasn't a board member, he was talking about the students of Jurupa, the students of this entire community, and if they weren't students in this community, he still cared about it. He didn't matter where they went to school. They were part of this community. He wanted them to succeed. Bobby will be missed. Someone, I think it was Mr. Hancock on the city council, said it will take 10 people to replace him. I think it will take more than that. I'm going to miss him. I'll miss his talk, our talks. Bobby was tolerant of other people's views. He just didn't shut you down. He listened to your view. Society, we're getting to the point where you're on one side or the other, and it's become intolerant to voice your opinion, to voice your views. And yet we can still do that here in Jurupa, I hope for a long time. As far as some of the comments this evening, these parents are concerned about their children that most of them have autism. They're concerned about their children adjusting at other schools. I had, I should say all my kids had issues, but one in particular, yes, it was hard for him to adjust when he was transferred to another school. But we have to listen to their concerns, and we do, but let the board know what transpires here with their concerns, so they don't have to keep coming back here. That we do feel we do understand their issues, and I do want to know, I'm sure we all do, that their children are happy where they're at. Okay, thank you.
Likewise, it is important to listen to people's concerns. That's part of our job as board members, and it's part of our job to make sure that we do take the time to listen. We may not always agree. We may not always ultimately decide in any particular favor, but one way or the other. But at the end of the day, it's important for people to walk away with a feeling that they've been heard and listened to, and that we care about their situation. And as with my colleagues, Bobby Hernandez has pretty much been on my mind all week, attending his celebration of his life last Wednesday. I first met Bobby probably one of the first people I met when I first came to Jurupa here and began as principal of West Riverside. That's 25 years ago. And I remember that. Even then, he was one of the first that I could call on for volunteering on a school site council, or for making a donation to some aspect of the school. An event such as participating in Principal for a Day. I mean, that man seemed to be everywhere. I think there were at least a dozen Bobby Hernandez running around, throughout the district, the Jurupa area. And talk about somebody caring and living to really make this a better community. It's he was incredible. And yeah, it's going to be tough. That's about it. Thank you.
I don't ever do this, but I think some of you know that Bobby was a friend of my family's. He and my wife went to middle school, well, it was junior high together, so I've known him probably almost as long as I've known my wife, and I just keep thinking of one call I got. They were at a high school reunion where I get a call from Bobby, not my wife. Where are you? You wouldn't sit with me. You knew I was going to be here. So Bobby didn't always make people comfortable, but he cared for you and would never say no and do anything for anybody in this community, irrespective of how he felt about that person. He kind of gave everybody a hard time, but also unconditional love. And even I shared missing, preparing for the board meeting, I always anticipate things that are going to happen. I was thinking, well, what's Bobby going to ask tonight? And, so we all remember you, Bobby. So.
Well, if that's it, then let's get close to today's board meeting, and thank you very much for coming tonight. that's it. Then let's get closer to today's board meeting, and thank you very much for coming tonight.